What's going on, guys? My name is Joe Graves, and this is Mastering Business Growth. Running a business can either be amazing or an absolute nightmare. So on this show, I speak with people who are killing it in business, and I find out what it really takes to succeed. If you think you'd be a good guest, then drop me an email at joe@innersound.media. Enjoy the episode. Lovely. So obviously this show is called Mastering Business Growth because I'm trying to master business growth. And I think some people out there might... Yeah, exactly. I know, right? Yeah.
Anyone does.
This is the common theme. Everyone's kind of, people coming on like, yeah, we turned over like 5 million last year. Still don't have a fucking clue how I did that. No. So, but you're obviously doing something right. So
we'll
please...
do a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Please can you tell us a bit about who you are, what you do?
So I'm Anthony Main. I'm the founder of The Distance. We're a digital product agency based here in York, but with clients all over the place. And we focus mainly on delivering mobile app solutions, basically.
Lovely. How did it get to this point? Where'd that all start?
I'm a proper childhood geek. Literally ones and noughts run through my blood. But I still went through uni and various other things and got a degree, worked through the agencies around Yorkshire. Finally got arrogant enough to get fed up with all the MDs and think I could do it myself. And 15 years later, I doubt I'm still trying to work it out.
Do you ever wish you'd just stayed working for someone?
Not necessarily someone, but I do quite often think it would have been easier to stay as a freelancer or a contractor because they used to print gold out and sleep in pillows of just notes, right? Once upon a time.
Yeah, man. Even in my industry, I sometimes think, oh my God, why don't I just go get a nice job somewhere, just doing, chill podcasts and go have 2 holidays a month like everyone else seems to. What's going on?
That's just a LinkedIn post, right?
Yeah, it's just LinkedIn.
It's not really what's going on.
That's what they'd have you believe.
Yeah.
But mate, so tell me a bit more about like the actual tangible things you do. So you do mobile solutions.
Yeah.
Give me a bit more detail.
Yeah, so the app space exploded back in 2007 when the iPhone came out. They weren't the start of apps, but it was when they started to become familiar to people. So we use apps every single day of our lives. We've probably got about 100 different apps on our phone, and we probably only use about 10 of them every day. But they become an intrinsic part of day-to-day life. And so we build those pieces of software that help contribute, whether it's consumer stuff whilst you're traveling, your travel apps with your tickets and your routing information in, right through to enterprise apps where people are using to capture data in their day-to-day rather than using notebooks and cameras and things like that. We can condense it all into your smartphone these days. So yeah, just stuff that you probably don't realize that you're using, but it's there helping you, improving your life and yeah, making your lives a bit more comfortable.
Well, these sound like apps that companies absolutely need, probably put a lot of money into, and could if they are bad and they don't behave the way they're meant to, could absolutely destroy someone. Like you say, things like train tickets, plane tickets, stuff like that. Yeah. And there's a lot of pressure on that. Do you ever? Is it always stuff like that, or do you ever have to make things like a little game or something like that?
We stay away from games. It's a very different skill set. Like we were just talking here, it's like you're getting into video and audio, but doing the next thing over there, you need a whole different skill set, different team, different expertise. So we stay on what we call utilitarian apps. So apps that have function and is goal oriented is the way we design and build things. So we always try and understand what both the end user's goals are of using the app, whether it be getting from A to B or finding access to a piece of information. And then we then have to layer that with the goals of the customer, because our customer, or our partner as we call them, because they have intended goals for their users, but they also have goals for their business. And believe it or not, whilst the press might say apps can make you a lot of money, probably 99% of the apps we've built in the last 15 years, none of them are directly revenue generating.
So it's interesting you say that. I posted something this morning, and it was a clip from a previous podcast I did talking about how in the B2B space, you really have to make it clear how, yes, if you hire me, this is how you can put £1 and get £10 out. You have to be so clear on that. So how is it that so many apps can not generate money, but then people are still paying for it? Or is it just a small piece that does inevitably lead to growth of your client?
It depends on the business and the customer, but most of the time, you're talking about efficiency savings if it's an enterprise app, so it's something for staff to use. You want to improve their lives and speed things up, basically, or make it more reliable or accurate. In a more consumer space, it depends. It's a value proposition quite often that is enhancing the use of their existing products or service. So you think in the case of our customer, Le Shuttle, the app gives them access to travel information, warnings about disruption to the trains. It follows their journey from the minute they leave their house to getting on the train, and then even when they're away. And that's all extra value. So it's customer services. So instead of looking at the actual return on investment from a monetary perspective, we try and break down what the customer's success is with other statistics. So it's improving this, stretching that, reducing costs in this other space. Another great example is we built an app that allows customers to self-serve if they're sick or they're going to be on sick from work. And by building this technology into an app and making the customers allowable to self-service, they've managed to reduce a call centre of nurses by tens of £1,000s a month. So the app itself doesn't generate any revenue, but it's going to save tens of thousands a month a year for this business. So it's quite easy to then invest more in it longer term.
I got you. Do you ever find that that's an awkward conversation with clients, or maybe one where you have to completely, give them like a paradigm shift and whatnot? Because oftentimes, again, back when we used to do music, people would be like, oh, well, I don't want to spend that much because, don't make that much money from the music. It's like, yeah, but you're a band. It's literally an integral part of what you do. You need it to then start touring, to then sell merch and build a brand and all that. Same with the podcast. A lot of time they don't make money directly through streaming, but it's like, okay, open up doors to sponsorship. It's a great way to build your network, inviting people on. People like to talk about what they do, stuff like that. And it's what you build off the back end of it.
That's right.
So do you ever find that it's like you need to go and completely explain this to people? Like, you probably won't make money off the app.
So most of the time there is this seed of the idea somewhere in the business, and that's why we've ended up connecting with them, whether it's just over a conversation that spurred an idea, or most of the time they're coming to us with this idea. That one person that's normally our connection already sees the value, but what we need to do is then help them then continue to sell that up to the bigger part of their business normally.
I got you.
So their board will need to sign off a budget, and when we're talking six figures, it's not cheap. So we help them define those statistics and the return on investment so that they can walk into that boardroom with confidence and say, we want to go with the distance because they're going to help us do this, this, and this, rather than going, right, we've spoken to a company, we think this is the app we're going to build and it's going to just cost this. We need to give them the support, like you say, to then sell it. So we're not the ones having to normally make the argument for them. They're normally arguing with their own board to get the budget sign off. So we just need to give them the tools and the qualification materials to justify and get the budget.
I got you. Well, that's interesting because I went in with that saying you sort of need to kind of connect the dots for people, how they can put money in and get more money back. Yeah. But it's not always that. I guess I've only just realized that from what you just said there. It's like, how can you go into a company and sort of revolutionize their systems, their processes, make it easier, which does inevitably affect the bottom line. Yeah. That actually brings me nicely to next thing I wanted to talk about, which was lead generation or business development as a whole, whether your philosophies on it, things you specifically have done. Because I believe there's two parts to a business. There's the part that you think you're doing, just the actual operations. We build apps. But then there's that whole other part, and it's sometimes more than half of it, which is like, well, how do you get the work?
Yeah.
Please tell me a bit more about how you even approach that at the distance.
So we're 15 years in, and we've probably tried dozens and dozens of different things. And one thing that we've noticed about the sales and marketing side of the business is it's continually changing and evolving. And as we've grown up through our market, our price points increased, our level of service has increased. At every sort of stage of that journey, the whole sales and marketing piece has had to change. So back when we started in 2009, we were in a blue ocean. Every agency wanted to start selling apps to their customers, but they didn't have any technical people in-house. So they just came knocking. and we were inundated. We grew very quickly. Over time, the space got more competitive, especially in the UK. It started to grow quite quickly. Then further on, we've now got much more accessible skills abroad. So therefore, the price points are coming down. And so therefore, we're now having to compete at an international level, but trying to put the stamp of UK quality on it and the UK price on it. And therefore, we've got to sell it a different way to that. So going back to our point on where's the ROI, where's the value, we have to sell our value proposition. No longer are we selling headcount to deliver an app. We're selling this journey of starting from that tiny seed of an idea to then focus on how we can turn that into a goal-oriented and justifiable product that is going to last the length of time. When you're investing this much money in something, it can't be right, let's see if have a go. It's not let's have a go and see if it helps. We need to be able to prove that what we build with them is going to be successful, and they're going to be able to use it for 3, 5, 10 years. And that isn't always the case for some apps. As you probably deleted as many apps as you've downloaded some days. So,
of course, yeah. When did it become clear to you that you were selling a value proposition? Because like me, you said you began as just fascinated, you were just into this. You liked building apps, you liked playing about with stuff like that, just as I liked playing music and whatnot, and a slow evolution of running the business and this and that. At what point did you kind of go, okay, I'm not strictly selling my service anymore, I'm selling an idea? When did that happen, or is it a slow evolution?
Sadly, I'd like to say far too late.
Yeah. Definitely far too late. Yeah.
And actually, even if in 15 years, it probably was only really a few years ago.
Yeah.
Well, we up till the last few years, there was always this continual throughput of clients. Not necessarily always enough, but it kept us going. So therefore, we didn't have much outbound strategy and everything else. We always kept an eye on our competitors. But what we'd realised about 2 years ago now, we were our offering was starting to change. We had more people doing design and what we call discovery, which is the value proposition of helping them decide and define what they're trying to do, not just build it. And that came as a bit of a realization. It's like, that's what we do, that's what everyone else says they do, but we realized we actually weren't telling that. Our website, our brand, it didn't come with that same story. And that's what we've been spending the last sort of 18 months recrafting and changing. And we do feel we're a bit different. We're a bit bolder because we've been doing this a long time. And our new brand and everything else is going to be like that. You're going to see it saying, come to us because we are right. Not just we can do what you ask, but we'll come with confidence.
Yeah, you feel like that should be a given sort of thing.
And so many times people have come to us and said, well, we've been to all these other agencies and they can say they do it, but they all look the same, and they're just giving you FaceTime and a price. Whereas when they come to us, within minutes of talking to us, we're already trying to solve their problems, trying to identify the opportunities, rather than just saying, yes, we can build it. And that's a big difference in the industry world, in the agency world. So,
well, do you know what? I'm actually fascinated by that balance of, branding, and we'll get to this in a minute because you've just been through an 18-month rebrand, which is insane. I'd like to hear more about that. But I find it amazing, that balance between talking about what you actually do, extremely tangible deliverables, that's where most people start, but then you learn you have to talk a bit more about your beliefs and what you do, like the emotions behind, what you sell and all that, because that's part of how you sell your service. You connect with people on a deeper level, but then sometimes I've found people have gone too far with that and they forget to even mention what they actually do. So did you struggle finding that balance? Tell me a bit more about finding that balance in the rebrand.
Well, yeah. So if we take a step back, like when we needed to start outbound campaigns to talk about sales or to get more pipeline, and at one point we used an outsourced company to do, and all that stuff you just talked about there, we instantly, within days of working with these outbound companies, these cold call companies or cold email companies, they just don't have that passion. They don't have the drive, the understanding of the market. So any messaging or anything that came from someone like that just fell on dead ears, right?
Yeah.
So there's no one just sitting there at the end of a phone waiting to spend 100, 200 grand on an app. So they never.
Oh, that'd be amazing, wouldn't it? My God.
So, as you know, and the reason we do this sort of stuff, right, is it's all got to be about telling the story, demonstrating the value, getting your offer out there. And it's not as easy as just picking up the phone and cold calling. We're not selling doors and windows, right? We're selling very expensive value propositions that people really need to understand carefully to find the right people to work with, to then invest in them, not just financially. So our best relations and our best solutions have come where we've had this really intimate relationship with our partners, and that's what we strive for the most, where our team can really get under the skin of what the customer does and what they want to achieve, and then we actually probably end up knowing more about what we're building for them from a functional and goal-oriented approach than they do in the end, because we'll touch as many of their staff's thoughts and theories and opinions than just the one point of contact. And so we try and filter that all through into a solution that works for a wide gamut of people. And so we have to have that passion and to understand it all, to then to understand the emotional ties to it all as well. So it is a lot deeper than where we started, which was literally just clattering the keys and churning out the code. So
I'm curious, like you said, a lot of your services can be 6 figures or more. What is it like beginning that relationship? Because getting someone to drop that much money, no matter how big their organization, it's still not nothing, ever. Just tell me a bit more about how you begin to build that trust with people.
This is where we had in our own sales and pipeline, we're probably our own tripped over our own feet in that that's what we used to do. That people come, we need this, that's the price, we'd build it. But as we just said, people aren't waiting at the end of the phone to spend that much money. So what we now do is we bring it down. So we don't start with 100 grand, 200 grand product price unless somebody is very specific about what they need. So we start just running ideation sessions with them to say, okay, you've got an idea, let's just try and prove it's worth it. From there, we'll then move into sort of maybe some prototyping. We'll mock up some screens. We'll get them to be able to then show that around their wider team, some of their customers maybe, and go, does this feel tangible? Does this seem to solve the problem that we think we've identified? And over time, and that relationship, we build it, and it may end up being that sort of sum in the end, but we'll start that much more cost-effective way because we've got something we can give them. It's tangible from a much more smaller price point. It's like, okay, we actually got something here. It's can be seen. People can touch it. They can play with it. They can see it work, how it's going to solve the problem, and therefore we can use that to justify the bigger spend. And therefore it takes a while, and you've got to bring people on that road and understand it, because they need to know those different steps. They won't know that step if they only thing in their mind is we need an app, and then you put a price on it. They don't understand how and why it needs to get to that point and that cost when they're not sure if it's going to be successful. So we need to take the time, prove that it will be. We don't build anything that isn't viable. We don't do things like marketing apps, like a throwaway of app for a festival, because whilst there's useful tools there, it's not a lot of longevity. And so to spend that much money on something that's going to be used for a weekend or a week, the return on investment isn't there. So there's products and other things out in the market that service that. They're not as good because they're not bespoke, but it's a different model. So we have to be careful we've got the right customers as well.
Yeah, agreed. You mentioned earlier you've tried dozens of sort of lead generation methods. Have you found, a lot of them are smoke, we all know that. Yeah. But have you ever found there's any kind of like real things like, right, that worked every time? Any kind of like real things that you'll stick to, that evergreen, as they say? Yeah,
you talked about mastery at the start, and I think anyone that's in this space will know there is no silver bullet. It's impossible. Like everything is, at our level anyway, is all long tail. We go to, if we went to a show, we wouldn't expect someone to come and go, oh yeah, we need an app.
Well, the secret is just playing the game.
It's just being there, there. Like in the last few weeks, probably 50% of the leads that have come in is because they've been referred by somebody else. And it might not be even someone we know, but it's someone we know that knows someone else, and they've seen our content, or they're just seeing our name regularly bandied about in this space, and therefore they may not know us at all, but because they've seen us and they see our content and our content looks credible, they'll refer us to that person, even though they don't know these guys, but they look like they stand up, right?
Yeah, have you tried these?
Yeah, I'd go and see them. Exactly like someone said an email to me the other day. It's like, hi, I've been referred to you by this person. I have no idea who this person is. I even Googled their name, looked them up on LinkedIn, can't find them. No idea who they are, but whoever they were, they've got presence of us somehow and
missed out on some solid commission.
Yeah. I either got a beer. I'd like to meet this Bill at some point.
Bill, thank you so much. You saved our company. Well, mate, you kind of touched on it a little bit before, but I want to talk about operations a little. So let's say, for example, you get a lead, you get an inquiry, someone's referred to you. Give me an overview of what it might look like for a customer. They're introduced to you, they need, I don't know.
Yeah, so customers come to us at different points in their journey, but if we were to go from the very start, it would be someone thinks an app will solve a problem. That's their real reason that they're there. And whether it's a customer problem, a business problem, whatever it might be.
And you're obviously aware of that, and you will ask them about that.
Yeah, so we'll put that'll be the first thing on a deck that we put a proposal back to them. That'll be the first thing it says this is the thing that we think we're going to try and achieve. And then we'll try and put some metrics around it. It's like, well, okay, how can you prove it? Right, well, this many customers are going to do this particular thing within this period of time, or they're going to do this extra thing, or our staff are going to be this much. So we then try and build out the value. And then from there, we look at what tools we have. And by tools, I mean what technologies and things like that might do the job. And then we start to build out what we call user flows. So we say, okay, this user is going to be engaged with this technology, whether it's a watch app, a phone app, a TV app, a web app. We'll pick the type of technology we feel is the right fit. And then we'll say, okay, the user needs to go from here to completing that task. What are the stages? So we'll draw these user flows that show how the user gets to there. And we build them up because a user might end up doing 10 things in the app. So you might book a train ticket. You might just want to look at your train ticket. You might want to just see what trains are available on a future date. They're all different journeys. And then from those journeys, we turn them into an interface. And at the first sort of start, we'll wireframe it. So we just draw the boxes and things on the screen, and then we'll start to build that so it might be clickable. So we turn it into a prototype. And then finally, we start to make it look like an app. We add the gloss. We do a deep dive into what their brand is, and therefore what their aspirations are, what the competitive market looks like. And we'll start to pull that creative together. Now, depending on the customer and the need, we may or may not do user research and test that along the journey with either themselves, the other core members of staff, or actual customers if we can get access to them, or even the public if it's going to be a new consumer market. And then over time, we put that product definition together, we build some documentation around it, and we finally at some point get some developers to code it, and then rigorous testing, everything else, and rounds of feedback loops with our customers, and we finally get what we call the MVP. Now, MVP is normally minimal viable product. We think it's the minimal valuable product because doing the bare bones doesn't always get you something that's successful, so we normally have to go a little bit further than that. And then it's about iteration and building on what our original thoughts were and analysing it, checking it, making sure that it's still continually delivering the same goals, and the goals might change over time.
That's really interesting, and something just came to our mind as you were saying that. That's from an inbound, right? So you know what their problem is immediately. Yeah. Is it the same process with outbound?
So outbound, we need to demonstrate that there's some value. So we will be in our content and our media, we'll be trying to connect with them in their thought process or their space and try and demonstrate where the value can be. And so we might want to say that, did you know that e-commerce apps, for example, have some of the highest engagement but quickest fall off? But travel apps, people engage in their apps for a long period of time, but they're sporadically used. So to justify to a travel company that someone needs an app when they're going to use it for one flight, for example, you've got to then think, what is the second time the user's going to open the app's reason. Why are they going to do it the third time, the fourth time, the fifth time? Because a lot of apps are used for a single task, and that's a lot of money to spend for a single activity. So therefore you need to build in the loyalty, the value proposition over time. So they'll keep your app on your phone for when they next travel, because they enjoyed the experience, and therefore they're more likely to spend with you than go to their competitor. So it's about that long-term use cases as much as it is the actual original goal in the first place.
I got you. I want to talk a bit about the emotional highs and lows of running a business, because the more people I speak to, it's clear, like, you know, one minute you're like on top of the mountain, like, this is amazing, you know, killing it. Look at this pipeline, all these clients, all this money, yay. And next minute it's like, oh my God, we might have to close. Have you been through anything like that yourself, or any particular lows or highs you want to talk about? Yeah, anything you've learned?
If I ever get around to it, and I'll purely be for vanity's sake, I write an autobiography. It will be called Roller Coaster and a Referendum. Because that is what business has been like, and I think it is for everybody. Every single person, mate. Yeah. Everyone's used the analogy of a swan, right? So LinkedIn, it all looks holidays and drinking and events.
We were just saying this before we started shooting.
Everyone's just running as hard as they can behind the scenes. So yeah, we've had our ups and our downs. We're 15 years in. We wouldn't be here without scars, but they're the past, right? We look to the future. I did a program called the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business course 10 years ago now, and there was a whole session on growth, and they drew this graph, and it looked like a set of steps. And they're like, that's what business really looks like. And you're like, what do you mean? It's like, well, does not every business just grow like an exponential curve? And I can prove it. I can show you on our turnover over the 15 years, we have grown in a series of steps. And what they also told you, and people don't want to know, is after each step, there's normally a dip as well. So you go up, you come down a little bit to go up again. And I tell you, we're on our third or fourth step, and we're going to come out of the dip, and then we're going to.
How major are these steps, though?
Well, for us, I'm talking turnover in these.
Oh, specifically
these
turnover. Yeah.
So I mean, just to plot it, right? But that's the easiest way to visualize it.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, it depends. Other companies, it's profitability and things like that.
Yeah.
Right? But it's head count. It's interesting comparing those three different lines. But for ours, those steps were clear in turnover. So we grew. I grew with a business partner. We split the business in half. So therefore, there was immediate a drop again. So I came back again, big step up. We then hit a referendum, right? Again, another challenge, another step. COVID, pandemic for everybody, right? We got to this lovely point, and everyone just then stopped or had a dip. Now we were lucky; we didn't have too much of a dip, and we've just had we're going for a big growth now. So, that's the opportunity ahead of us. So.
Amazing. Well, I do know myself. It's when it's going bad, it's brutal.
Yeah.
And I know for whatever reason, it's just in my blood. I have to run my own thing. I have to do my own. What is it with you when things are going bad? What keeps you working for yourself and running this business, despite the fact that you could probably just walk into another great job with a fraction of the stress? Who knows, financially, probably a very good living. What keeps you going?
Some of my friends and family will say I'm a workaholic. So, or maybe I'm a glutton for punishment. I don't know. Maybe I did some bad in a past life and I'm making up for it. I don't know. But when the business nearly closed back in 2016, so a long time ago now, I got introduced to a guy who wrote a book called Hope Won't Pay the Wages. Great guy, fairly local. And luckily I got the opportunity to go and speak to him. And in his book, he asks a lot of questions of you, of like, when was the happiest role you had and all this stuff. And it helps you try and determine what is your career path, or what is the job that. And the problem what I had was the owner of the business was the only thing that I could come up with, because I'm just too critical of other people and everything else. So working for someone else, I think I'd struggle with on a day-to-day. I need to be in a leadership role no matter what. So there, I think I don't have any other choice, so I have to make a go at it.
I'm the exact same. I need to know that if I, whatever reason, can't work on that day, or I'm just not in the mood, And don't get me wrong, this is so rare this happens, but I need to know that I can be like, I'm not doing it. Or if I decide I'm not interested in providing that service anymore, I need to know I can change it. I like having total control over things. It's worth it. It's necessary.
But you can't do it on your own, right?
No.
So I'm lucky that I've got a team around me. Not everyone does. And it's a team that I've nurtured and hopefully we feel we've got a great culture and we're all striving for the same success. So when I'm feeling it, they're feeling it too, and we can work on it together rather than it just be my problem. They talk about being a leader is quite lonely. It's only lonely if you don't share your problems, right?
Yeah.
So I'm lucky. On the back of that program I was telling you about, I have a growth group. So I have, it's changed over the numbers, but there's about 5 other individuals that every quarter we spend time trying to chew over the big problems. And if we have a problem, I just pick up the phone and talk to them. And they're there. They'll find the time. And it's no different to my local network. The people that run small business around me, you just need to make the time. Find them. Go and have a coffee, a pint, whatever it needs. A lot of pints some nights if you need to. But
gallons, if you will.
We're all in this like business boat together, right? We all are going up and down over these waves, and I don't know where that analogy's come from, but we've got to work it out, and together we'll be better. And so most people are always open to support you and your challenge, because what I have learned in 15 years of business, all of our problems are pretty much the same.
Yeah.
They're just in a different industry or a different market or a different time, but they are effectively the same. And so we're all quite capable of helping each other try and solve them. We just look at it from a slightly different angle or take a step back, or different viewpoints really, really just help. So yeah, I've had a lot of challenges in the time, but I've always found it's the people around me that get me through it. I'm not just sitting there banging my head against the wall all on my own. And that includes my family too. They've been incredibly supportive. So,
obviously you say, great support system. You're not doing this alone. You obviously will have done the first chunk, more or less like taking responsibility for everything. But, you've got great people around you now like Louise and whatnot. When you got like a certain professional support system, growing your team, nurturing your team, did you feel like a weight off your shoulders or?
Yeah, so even until the last few years, it was still largely about me commanding the troops and at least setting the direction and the pace. But as we've talked on a previous podcast, Louise took over and came in as MD. She's then built a leadership team around her. So therefore, the weight and the pressure that was previously just mine to make the decisions. So even Louise and stuff would come to me and ask me for the answers. Now they have to try and work those answers out as much as I do. And the responsibility is then shared. They were given a lot more autonomy, and all those things, those pains, those struggles infinitely are reduced because you've got more people taking on the same responsibilities rather than you just sitting on a throne somewhere in a leadership tower and trying to do it on your own, because you can't.
Do you think if you had to do it again, if everything just went to shit and you had to start again, you didn't have money to play with and hiring people, do you think you'd go through it again?
I probably would, yeah.
Yeah.
I say I wouldn't because it's hard, and you look at the darker days and you think, man, why am I running an agency? Agency life is really, really hard and unpredictable, and it comes in waves. But I don't know what else I could do. Like,
that is literally what me and Sam say to each other when things are looking bad. We'll be like, well, what else are we doing? What are we going to do instead? This is what we want to do. Yeah. And it's easy to get bogged down and forget that actually most of the time it's great and whatnot, but just when it is bad, it can be brutal.
Yeah, I mean, it must be pretty tough just being the two of you. You don't have other people that you can fall back on, whereas I've got a whole team at various levels, and so therefore you can delegate tasks and you can then focus. Or if you're having a bad day, there's someone else to pick it up. But
they're not so far to fall, so it's easy to, there's pros and
we were
cons.
talking about this earlier, right?
Yeah,
it's like, should I have just stayed as a freelancer? Maybe. I would have had the same level of customers, sales responsibilities, staffing, but it wouldn't have been as fun on my own.
No, of course not. Well, I want to end this on a bit more of a higher then. Like, obviously, you've been through this 18-month rebrand. What is the difference now? What is the distance now compared to what it was, let's say 2 years ago?
So yeah, previously we're very focused on what my background was, which was the technology. And as the business has matured, we now have a team of really diverse skills. So we call ourselves a digital product company now. So it's not just about apps, it's about using digital technology to solve those business goals and customer goals and user goals that we're saying. So we are full. We're an entity where we can help our customers across what we call the ever-changing digital landscape. There's a good sniff, isn't it? But that's what's happening, right? Look at the waves of AI that are happening right now. It was apps back in 2007 to 2009 came through, websites before that. It's continually changing, and we need to be the experts to then for our customers and partners to lean on to then say, how do we do this, or what's happening here, and is AI relevant for us or not? And we need to have the answers for those questions, and so therefore the customers can just know. And
like
we
built-in consultants as well, sort of thing.
Yeah, that's it. And they'll lean on us for that advice, and then we'll work through a workshop and various things to say, okay, yeah, let's go after that or not, because the cost might not be right, or the technology might not quite be ready. Like Alan Sugar, in theory, he created a tablet like the iPad way before smartphones came out, right? It just didn't land because it was the wrong time, the wrong type of technologies. It was too early, too expensive. And sometimes it isn't always right. And maybe he should have done some more value proposition work at the start before he to determine if the world wanted it or not.
Of course. Well, I'll tell you what, mate, I've really enjoyed that, but we'll leave it there. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Always a pleasure.
Thank you so much for watching this episode. Again, if you think you'd be a good guest on the show, then please drop me an email at joe@innersound.media. See you in the next episode.